The Space Marines of Warhammer 40,000 were divided into 20 legions during the Great Crusade, each created with a specific purpose, distinct tactics to warfare, and a fatal flaw. Hi, Icy Pie here. Let's get started breaking down the strengths and fatal flaws of every Space Marine legion.
Well, on second thoughts, let's not go to Camelot. It is a silly place.
The Dark Angels are a secretive legion loosely inspired by the Knights of the Round Table. As the first Space Marine legion, they were created with enormous expectations by the Emperor. To meet them, they trained to excel at every form of warfare: assault, recon, heavy weapons, close combat, you name it. As boring as it sounds, their strength is that they excelled at everything. On top of that, they possess a massive stockpile of forbidden artifacts from the Dark Age of technology, making them the most technologically advanced legion. Feels like another legion deserved that stockpile more, but we'll get into that later. Their fatal flaw originates from the Horus Hersey. A large portion of their legion turned traitor. Dubbed the Fallen, the ensuing civil war from their betrayal led to the destruction of their homeworld, Caliban, through the use of a massive warp storm that shattered the planet, but also created an escape for the remaining Fallen to flee into. Since then, the Dark Angels have become obsessed with hunting the Fallen in total secrecy, an obsession so consuming that it often overrides their duty to the Imperium itself. They keep it secret both out of shame and fear of retribution from the rest of the Imperium. What I don't think the Dark Angels realize is that the act of covering it up and lying is more of a shameful action than the Fallen's betrayal. The rest of the Imperium could have helped them out at the very start, but that ship has long sailed off now. We'll see if they end up regretting it. What I like most about this legion is the fact that—
Warning, by order of the Ordo Redactus, you are not sanctioned to view this Voxcast. Re-establishing Voxlink to third entry.
I'm going to jail!
the Emperor's children were crippled early on by a flaw in their gene seed, making it extremely difficult to create new Space Marines. For a long time, the Emperor's children had to rely on other legions just to survive the Great Crusade. That early weakness left a deep scar within them that festered. Under their Primarch Fulgrim, it turned into a fixation on perfection. Perfection in tactics, discipline, swordsmanship, to be the absolute best in everything they tried. No room for error. Their strength was that this obsession over perfection pushed them to become some of the finest and most elite warriors in the entire Imperium. However, that same obsession was also their fatal flaw. Perfection is an impossible goal, a mountain you can never truly climb, a lesson I think we all need to hear every so often. Well, the Emperor's children chased it anyway, which became the crack in their armor that Slaanesh needed to whisper their temptations. Their pursuit of perfection twisted into an obscene excess of pain and pushing their senses to the limits. Their fall to chaos turned the Emperor's children into the monsters of indulgence and sadistic suffering we see in the 41st millennium. As hard as it is to believe, they got off easy compared to some of the other legions we will get into later.
Honorable battle, brother. May I have some bolts? No.
The Iron Warriors were the Emperor's masters of siege warfare. They were the ones the Emperor relied on when a fortress, hive city, or world had to be broken. With a more focused training from the Mechanicum compared to most other legions, and the brutal leadership of their Primarch, Perturabo, they became experts at grinding wars of attrition. Yes, their main strength is siege warfare, but the reason they are so good at it is how determined they are once they have an objective. Siege warfare, even in real life, is some of the most difficult challenges to exist in war. You have to be tactical, but you also have to have enough resources to outlast the defenders, and finally, many sieges, even successful ones, lead to more casualties on the attacker's side. And this is exactly where their fatal flaw comes in. Perturabo believed his brother Rogo Dorn and his legion were favored by the Emperor, and to prove himself, he accepted ever more impossible and thankless sieges for his legion. Those victories came with horrific casualties and no glory. Well, at least from Perturabo's perspective. Over time, that bitterness spread throughout the entire legion. And that was their flaw, the resentment and jealousy of their brother legion, clouding their judgment and reasoning. They came to hate the very Imperium they were sacrificing themselves to protect, so when Horus offered them a chance to destroy it, they joined with no hesitation. While they now work in tandem to Chaos to destroy the Imperium, they don't consider themselves puppets of Chaos, but to me that is a bit delusional. Just because they don't see the chains doesn't mean they're not there.
Speed. I am speed.
The White Scars. Their aesthetic and combat style are inspired by Genghis Khan and his nomadic horse riders. They specialize in extreme hit-and-run assaults using their attack bikes and deploying rapid strikes to shatter enemy formations before they can react. They excel at pursuit and hunter-killer operations. Even in the 41st millennium, they're still organizing hunting parties to track down and eliminate enemy Chaos warbands. Compared to most other legions, they're unusually well-rounded as people, valuing culture, poetry, and philosophy in their downtime. While their greatest strength is their speed, it's their fatal flaw as well. Similar to the real-life blitzkrieg tactic, which is the strategy of advancing towards the enemy so quickly that they have no time to react, you can easily outrun your own supply lines and support. The White Scar's entire style of war becomes a liability in any kind of long drawn out fight, like what the Iron Warriors have to deal with, for example. This legion has to pick their battles wisely or else they'll be severely outmatched.
I'm not a furry. I just wanted to know what I'd look like with a tail.
The Space Wolves are a ferocious, close combat focused legion, famous for their brutal melee assaults and warrior culture. Their gene seed acts a bit different to the others. It mutates the Space Marine to have features like wolves from their homeworld of Fenris. This grants them heightened senses, reflexes, and powerful animal instincts. Their strength is simple. Their brutal style of combat is so effective that the Emperor ordained the Space Wolves as his executioners, experts at killing other Space Marines. And there is a theory that the Space Wolves are responsible for the extermination of one of the Lost Legions. No guarantees, but they are perfect for the job. However, their fatal flaw is buried in that same gene seed. A Space Wolf recruit's final trial is to drink from the cup of Wolfen to activate the gene seed within them. During their transformation, some recruits lose control and become Wolfen, warriors overtaken by permanent feral rage. And the danger never truly goes away. Even centuries-old Space Wolves can still succumb to this curse, and for about 99% of cases, it's impossible to revert. The Wolfen are powerful, but extremely hard to control. And for a legion built around coordination and battlefield discipline, having warriors who can suddenly lose themselves to the beast makes every battle a risk. Wait. Oh my god, I just realized these guys are werewolves. What the hell's wrong with me? How did I not see this? The Imperial Fists are experts at fortification and defense. They built the defenses of the Imperial Palace itself and excel at holding ground, enduring sieges, and turning any position into an unbreakable defense. In many ways, they are the other side of the coin to the Iron Warriors. While that takes care of their strength, their fatal flaw is their obsession with failure. Rogel Dorn and his legion carry crushing guilt over every mistake, especially after the Siege of Terra. They hold themselves to impossible standards, becoming rigid, stubborn, and increasingly unwilling to compromise or adapt. Hell, they even have tiers to this behavior. Some even punish themselves through extreme methods for a single mistake, like the infamous pain glove that activates all the pain receptors on their body. This is a fine line that the Imperial Fist walks, as the obsession of failure is just another way to say you have an obsession over perfection, like what led to the Emperor's children falling to chaos. This is just a guess, but I imagine the difference is that the Emperor's children's perfection is a selfish desire, while the Imperial Fist is more of a selfless one. But hey, that's just a theory. I miss Mad Pat.
Well, I stabbed him 37 times in the chest.
Carl, that kills people!
The Night Lords are a legion of serial killers that utilize terror tactics to suppress their enemies. They use fear, torture, and public brutality to break entire populations into submission. They leave flayed bodies in the streets, broadcast the screams of victims over the Vox channels, and wait in the shadows for the right moment to rend the flesh of the innocent. On the battlefield, they specialize in fast, close-range assaults using jump packs and lightning claws, striking from darkness before their enemies know where they are. Their greatest strength is psychological warfare, as we've discussed, but their fatal flaw actually makes a lot of sense if you think about it. Just like many real-life serial killers, the Night Lords target victims that they know can't fight back or match their strength. They aren't a legion that can handle a long drawn-out fight or an open battlefield against an equal opponent. Choosing such weak civilians to kill, honestly, it's cowardly, and it doesn't challenge them. A Space Marine is meant to rise to the challenge, not falter at its knees.
Dracula don't suck. Dracula scrape with his fangs and lick up the blood, like this.
The Blood Angels fight as elite close assault shock troops, but unlike the Night Lords, they are revered across the Imperium as divine saviors. Their strengths are both to inspire hope for the Imperium, and on the battlefield, they are devastating melee specialists, exemplified by their unit of Sanguinary Guard wielding ancient relic blades some of these blades spanning all the way back to the Horus Heresy. But beneath that golden image lies two genetic flaws or curses. The first is the Red Thirst, a battle frenzy that drives some Blood Angels to lose control and crave the blood of their enemies, but this only happens temporarily. They're basically vampires, which I've known about this for years. I don't know why the space rules never clicked for me. Anyway, the second flaw is far worse. After Sanguinius was slain by Horus, a psychic scar spread throughout the Legion. Known as the Black Rage, it causes warriors to relive their Primarch's final moments again and again until their minds finally break. Those who succumb to it are placed into the Death Companies, units sent to die in one last battle in an uncontrollable death frenzy. The Blood Angels may look divine, but their legacy is built on a curse that they can never truly escape. Well, actually, the Lamenters chapter temporarily solved it, but it came back. Those guys are magnets for bad luck though. Oh, if you've enjoyed the video so far, please consider subscribing. Thanks.
From the moment I understood the weakness of my flesh, it disgusted me.
The Iron Hands are cold, logic-driven cyborg warriors who believe weakness must be purged from both body and mind. Rings a bit of a bell, doesn't it? Their strength lies in their specialization of using devastating heavy weapons, armored vehicles, and dreadnoughts. Man, do I love dreadnoughts. The Iron Hands also possess the largest stockpile of weapons from the Dark Age of technology. Oh, whoops, my bad, that's the Dark Angels. Of course, their Primarch's alive, they get 50 models, why don't we just lump that in as well, why not? Sorry, my bias is showing a bit. Anyway, the Iron Hands do have a decent amount of tech from the Dark Age of technology, much of it coming from their homeworld of Medusa and some of it from the Adeptus Mechanicus. A lot of their advantages come from the backing of the Adeptus Mechanicus, who out of all the legions they share the closest bond to due to sharing the same ideologies and fascination with technology. But for all their power, the Iron Hands are a good contender for the most flawed legion. After the death of their Primarch Ferrus Manus during the Horus Heresy, the legion turned to self-loathing to cope. They blamed themselves, their allies, and even Ferrus himself for their failure. Instead of learning from his teachings, they rejected them, choosing emotional suppression and cybernetic perfection as a way to never fail again. Their flaw is that they hate themselves. Oh man, getting a little too real, am I right? In their attempt to erase weakness through machinery and cold logic, the Iron Hands are chasing the same impossible ideal of perfection that once doomed the Emperor's children. I know I'm bringing the Emperor's children up a lot, but it shows you how close some of these legions were to falling down the same path. These legions aren't as different as they want to believe. The World Eaters were built for brutal, close-quarter slaughter. Only the most violent recruits were accepted into their ranks, and while their legion fielded powerful mechanized support, it existed mainly to just get the World Eaters close enough to get right into close combat. Their savagery escalated when their Primarch, Angron, was found. Angron was once a gladiatorial slave that had the butcher's nails forcibly implanted to alter his brain. These implants reward killing and punish hesitation with unbearable pain, but it also boosted the user's fighting skills and strength. Angron had this technology replicated throughout his legion. The result was a force of unstoppable savage troops, driven to fight harder and more violently than any other legion, which became their ultimate strength. The implant has many problems though, which leads into the legion's flaw. The butcher's nails erase discipline, strategy, and reason. Core concepts to a fully functioning legion. It leaves only rage and the drive to kill. Combined with Angron's hatred of the Emperor, the legion was perfectly primed to fall to Khorne. The World Eaters now exist only as frenzied warbands, fighting forever to spill blood in their blood god's name.
Hi everyone, Kevin here. Today, we're going to learn how to use Microsoft Excel in just 15 minutes.
Okay, I know some people are sick of seeing the Ultramarines. They get a lot of the spotlight from Games Workshop, but when researching this video, I actually started to like them more than I thought. The Ultramarines are the most organized legion in the Imperium. Their greatest strength has nothing to do with combat, but logistics, doctrine, and a well-defined command structure. They perfected large-scale warfare through rigid battle protocols and even created the Codex Astartes. This organization makes the Ultramarines pretty effective in almost any situation. On top of that, Their gene seed is the most stable of all the legions, allowing them to expand and rebuild more easily than anyone else. Also, there is a theory that the remnants of the 2nd and 11th Legion were integrated into the Ultramarines during the pre-Heresy era because of their stable gene seed, but you didn't hear that from me. Their flaws were a lot harder to pin down. They are a lot more subtle than other legions. They tend to rely too heavily on their combat doctrines, which makes them rigid and inflexible when everything doesn't go according to plan. What's that old expression? Something something, plans never survive first contact? And because Guilliman trained them to be both warriors and statesmen, internal politics and hierarchy can slow decision making and create unnecessary red tape inside the Legion. It's kind of like how it worked when you have a meeting just to set up another longer meeting where nothing gets done and all of it could have just been a simple email. That's the Ultramarines.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
The Death Guard are defined by their extreme endurance. Even before their fall to chaos, they were famous for surviving battles of attrition through sheer toughness, reinforced further by Mortarion and his toxin-resilient warriors of his homeland Barbarous. After their fall to Nurgle, or well, they were actually tricked, but that resilience became a horrific, pestilent immortality. These new Plague Marines who feel no pain even as their flesh rots and their organs fall out, they continue to fight through it as rotting, walking tanks of death. Their greatest strength is being nearly impossible to kill. They can even be considered... Wait, not everyone's watched this show. Will anyone get this joke? Anyway, their fatal flaw is their speed. They are slow. Painfully slow. I mean, it makes sense. Their bodies are literally rotting away. They really are like zombies as a comparison. The Death Guard win by grinding forward as an unstoppable wall, but the lack of speed and flexibility makes their strategy easy to anticipate, and their Legion is vulnerable to fast mobile forces, long-range firepower, and fire weapons to suppress their diseases and plagues. What still has to be considered though is even if you know the Death Guard are coming, do you have enough firepower to stop them? The Thousand Sons are defined by their intellect and mastery over the warp using Psychers. Psychers are some of the most powerful beings in the Warhammer universe, able to bend reality itself. So having a large amount of your superhuman soldiers also double as space wizards is a pretty big benefit. Their psychic warriors are obviously their most potent strength, but what about their flaw? Well, I would argue their major flaw started around the time they fell to chaos. Keep in mind, I'm skipping a lot of lore here, but essentially to escape their battle against the Space Wolves, Magnus teleported himself, his Legion, and his homeworld into the warp. To prevent the Legion from mutating and dying in the warp, Magnus's second-in-command Ahriman cast a spell to save them, but there was a massive catch to it. The spell reduced any non-psychic Space Marines into dust that fused with their war gear, turning them into animated suits of armor, now dubbed Rubric Marines. Anyway, as for their flaw, after the spell, only a few true sorcerers remain, and new recruits must be rare, naturally gifted psychers to create more. As a result, the Thousand Sons are incredibly powerful, but almost incapable of replacing their losses. They do have another method technically. Their sorcerers can use a long ritual to bring back the fallen Rubric Marines, but even then, in a universe of constant war, they are always losing more troops than they can ever gain back.
You were the chosen one! It was said that you would destroy this and not join them!
The Black Legion, once called the Luna Wolves and later on the Sons of Horus, were the Emperor's favorite spearhead of the Great Crusade. Trained directly under Horus and exposed to the Emperor longer than any legion, their greatest strength was their adaptability, able to excel in virtually any style of warfare. They weren't considered the favorite legion by the Emperor for nothing. Their fatal flaw, however, was their dependence on Horus himself. When Horus died in the, Horus Heresy, hopefully you see the connection here, the Legion lost its identity and collapsed into fractured warbands. Even after Abaddon, Horus' second-in-command reforged them as the Black Legion, they have never truly recovered the unity, resources, or dominance they possessed during the Horus Heresy. And honestly, they may never reach that height again. The Word Bearers are defined by their absolute devotion. At first, that faith was placed in the Emperor, believing him to be a god, but he rejected their worship and punished them instead. The Emperor really hated religion and didn't want anyone thinking he was a god, but he also showed up everywhere looking like this, so I mean, I can't completely blame the Word Bearers. Moving on, Lorgar and his legion looked for other gods that were worthy of their worship, and they found that in the gods of chaos. Their greatest strength came from their religious zeal and their ability to spread that religion to others, forming cults and corrupting worlds across the Imperium under the same doctrine. Their fatal flaw, however, is that blind faith. They cannot stand on their own without something to worship. This was the problem the Emperor was trying to fix in humanity from his point of view. The word bearers place all meaning and identity in higher powers, and without their religion, they have nothing, placing it in gods that 100% don't have their best interests.
I want to poop the snoot.
The Salamanders are known as the most compassionate of the Space Marine legions. They actively protect civilians, maintain bonds with their mortal families, and fight with a strong sense of responsibility towards regular humans. On the battlefield, their major strengths lie in close-range firepower using primarily flamers and melt weapons. Not only that, but many in their legion have exceptional craftsmanship, producing some of the finest weapons and armor in the Imperium. They have a lot of positive traits. It's why people like them so much, and honestly so do I, but that doesn't mean they don't have faults. Their reliance on short-range weaponry limits their effectiveness in long-distance engagements, and their willingness to sacrifice Space Marines to save civilian lives often puts their legion at a strategic disadvantage. The Imperium as a whole and some of the less sentimental legions would never accept this kind of trade.
I'm Batman. I live in the shadows. Justice.
The Raven Guard are the Imperium's reconnaissance and guerrilla warfare specialists. Their greatest strengths lie in stealth, assassination, and urban combat. They hide in the shadows and utilize precision strikes to their target rather than brute force. Now, they might sound pretty similar to the Night Lords by that description, but they do have their differences. For example, the Raven Guard's favorite melee weapon is the lightning claws. Okay, wait, they are pretty similar to the Night Lords, but okay, look, they don't skim people, alright? That's the important difference here. Their fatal flaw lies in their gene seed. After the Dropside Massacre, their Primarch, Corvus Corax, attempted to rapidly rebuild the Legion using experimental methods, which severely damaged their genetic stability. There were already problems with their gene seed to begin with. Low survival rates, limited gene stock, malfunctioning organs. They even have a baked-in hereditary depression. I mean, come on, give these guys a break. Man, that was a lot. I'm glad this next Legion is easy to explain, right?
It was all a ruse, you pathetic little ant. For you see, I, the landlord, was the mastermind the entire time. Every single thing that's happened to you over the last 24 hours was orchestrated by me and my insane mind.
The Alpha Legion's operations are purposely structured to be unreadable. They have secrets on top of misinformation on top of double agents. They might give a recruit relic armor and treat them as the commander when the actual leader is in the front lines itself in an ordinary squad. Adding to the confusion, the Legion was led by two Primarchs, Alfarius and Omegon, both unusually short for Primarchs and capable of blending in seamlessly to their own ranks. When one of the Alpha Legion's troops are questioned, they always give the same answer: I am Alfarius. One of the two Primarchs was supposedly killed, but honestly nobody is really sure which one died or if either of them died at all. It's not even certain if they truly betrayed the Imperium or not. They fight with chaos, but some of the things they do says otherwise. Their greatest strength is that nobody can predict them and prepare a good counter for them. Their fatal flaw though is linked to the same strength. In the 41st millennium, the Alpha Legion has fractured into countless independent warbands, each supposedly acting in service of some sort of vast hidden plan. But after 10,000 years of secrecy, it is entirely possible that some of these warbands no longer understand what the original plan even is. Whether this is deliberate or not is impossible to tell. To give a more practical flaw, the Alpha Legion is also poorly suited to open warfare. They're not built for large-scale battles and wouldn't do well against any of the other legions head-on. Anyway, I'm terrible at making outros. Why does Discord keep making garbage decisions? Goodbye.